The crystal chandeliers cast warm light across the elegant restaurant as Sophie Martin carried a tray of appetizers through the dining room. At 28, she had been working at Maron's for 3 years, saving every penny for the culinary school tuition she dreamed of affording someday. The upscale restaurant paid better than most service jobs, and Sophie was good at what she did, moving through the space with grace despite the exhausting 12-hour shifts. She was delivering orders to table 7 when she noticed him watching her. He sat alone at the bar, a man in his late 30s wearing an expensive dark suit, holding a glass of wine he was not drinking. What caught Sophie's attention was not his obvious wealth or handsome features, but the profound sadness in his eyes as he watched her move through the restaurant. It was not the predatory stare she had learned to deflect from entitled customers. It was something else entirely, something that looked like grief and longing mixed together. When Sophie's shift ended and she went to collect her tips from the bar, the man was still there. The bartender, Marcus, whispered to her as she approached. "That guy has been sitting there for 2 hours, barely touching his wine, just watching you work. I'm getting concerned he might be a problem." "I'll handle it," Sophie said quietly, then approached the man with the professional friendliness she used for all customers. "Good evening, sir. I'm Sophie. Is there anything I can get for you before I finish my shift?" The man looked at her and Sophie saw tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I've been incredibly inappropriate staring at you all evening. I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable. It's just that you remind me of someone. Your wife." Sophie guessed gently. The man nodded. "How did you know?" "The way you were looking at me," Sophie said. It was not the usual way men look at waitresses. It was sad and tender at the same time, like you were seeing someone else. "I'm Julian Westbrook," the man said. "And you're right. My wife Catherine passed away 18 months ago. Cancer. You move like her. You smile like her. Even the way you tilt your head when you're listening to customers is exactly like she used to do." Sophie felt her heart constrict with sympathy. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Julian took a breath. "I know this is going to sound insane. And please feel free to say no, but I need to ask you something. Tomorrow is our wedding anniversary. What would have been our 10th anniversary. My family is having a dinner to commemorate the occasion, and I can't face going alone. Everyone will look at me with pity and I'll have to sit there with an empty chair beside me and I just can't do it." He pulled out his wallet and withdrew several hundred bills, setting them on the bar. "I'm offering you $1,000 to be my date for one evening just to sit beside me at the dinner to help me get through this one night. I know it's strange and probably completely inappropriate, but I'm desperate." Sophie stared at the money, at this grieving man, at the impossible situation he was proposing. "You want to hire me to pretend to be your date at your anniversary dinner?" "Not to pretend to be Catherine," Julian said quickly. "I don't want you to try to be her or pretend to be her ghost. I just need someone there so I'm not alone. Someone who might help me remember the good times instead of just drowning in the loss." Sophie should have said no. Every reasonable instinct told her this was a bad idea. But she saw the desperation in Julian's eyes, the raw grief he was trying so hard to manage. And she thought about her own losses, her own moments when loneliness felt unbearable. 2000, Sophie said, "If I'm going to help you through this, if I'm going to spend an evening with your grieving family, it needs to be worth it." Julian smiled, a broken thing that did not reach his eyes. $2,000. You have a deal. The next evening, Sophie found herself wearing a simple but elegant dress Julian had sent to her apartment, being picked up in a town car and driven to a private room at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants. Julian met her at the entrance, looking exhausted despite his impeccable suit. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. "I know this is strange for you, but it means more than you know." Julian's family was already seated when they arrived. His parents, his sister, and her husband, and his late wife's parents. Sophie felt their eyes on her as Julian introduced her simply as Sophie, a friend who had agreed to join them for the evening. She saw the questions in their expressions, the confusion about who this stranger was, and why Julian had brought her to such an intimate family gathering. But Catherine's mother, an elegant woman with kind eyes, smiled at Sophie and said, "It's nice to meet you, dear. Thank you for being here with Julian." The dinner was both easier and harder than Sophie expected. The family shared stories about Catherine, about her laugh and her quirks, and the way she had loved with her whole heart. Julian contributed to these memories, but Sophie could see the pain behind every story, the way his hands shook slightly when he reached for his water glass. Halfway through the meal, Julian's father proposed a toast to Catherine, and Sophie watched as Julian's composure began to crack. Without thinking, she reached under the table and took his hand, squeezing gently. Julian's fingers closed around hers with desperate strength, and he managed to get through the toast without breaking down. After dinner, as the family moved to a sitting area for coffee, Catherine's mother pulled Sophie aside. "I don't know who you are to my son-in-law," the older woman said gently. "But I want to thank you. This is the first time since Catherine died that I've seen him not drowning. You're helping him stay afloat, and that matters. I'm just here for the evening," Sophie said, feeling the need to be honest. "I'm not anyone special to him." "You're here," Catherine's mother said. "That makes you special. So many people have abandoned him because they don't know how to handle his grief. You showed up. That's everything." As the evening wound down and Julian drove Sophie home in his own car, they sat in comfortable silence for several blocks before Sophie spoke. "Do you want to talk about her? About Catherine?" Julian was quiet for a long moment. She was everything. Brilliant and funny, and she saw the best in everyone. She worked at a nonprofit helping homeless families find housing. She could have done anything with her intelligence, but she chose to do something that mattered. "I met her at a charity gala I was required to attend for work, and she spent the entire evening mocking the excess and asking why we weren't just donating the money directly instead of spending it on overpriced food and decorations." He smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "I fell in love with her that night. She challenged everything I thought I knew about success and priorities. She taught me that having money meant nothing if you weren't using it to make the world better." "She sounds incredible," Sophie said. "She was," Julian said, "and I miss her every single day. But tonight, for the first time since she died, I got through our anniversary without completely falling apart. You helped me do that, Sophie. Thank you." When they reached Sophie's modest apartment building, Julian handed her an envelope. "Your payment is promised. $2,000. Sophie took the envelope but found herself hesitating. "Julian, can I ask you something? Anything? Are you in therapy? Are you talking to anyone about your grief?" Julian looked away. "My family thinks I should be over it by now. 18 months is long enough to grieve according to my father. I'm supposed to be moving on, dating, rebuilding my life. But I can't imagine being with anyone else. I can't imagine wanting anyone else." "Grief doesn't have a timeline," Sophie said gently. "But you do need help processing it. What you're feeling is normal, but you can't carry it alone forever." She pulled out her phone. "My best friend is a grief counselor. She specializes in helping people who have lost spouses. Can I give you her number? Not because there's anything wrong with still grieving, but because you deserve support from someone who understands what you're going through." Julian took the number with shaking hands. "Why are you doing this? You got your payment. You could just walk away." "Because you're hurting," Sophie said simply. "And because tonight I saw a man who loved his wife so much that 18 months later, he's still unable to function without her. That kind of love is rare and precious, and you deserve help honoring it, while also learning to live again." Over the following months, Julian called Sophie several times, updating her on his progress with the grief counselor, thanking her for the recommendation. They met for coffee occasionally, platonic meetings where Julian talked about his therapy and Sophie shared her own dreams of culinary school. Julian eventually offered to pay for Sophie's entire culinary education, but she refused, insisting she wanted to earn it herself. They compromised with Julian providing a scholarship through his late wife's nonprofit, allowing Sophie to accept the help without feeling it was charity. 2 years after that anniversary dinner, Sophie graduated from culinary school. Julian was in the audience along with his family and Catherine's parents, all of them cheering as Sophie received her certificate. At the celebration dinner afterward, Julian's sister pulled Sophie aside. "You know he's in love with you," she said bluntly. Sophie shook her head. "He's still in love with Catherine. That's okay. That's how it should be. He can love Catherine's memory and also love you." Julian's sister said, "They're not mutually exclusive." But he's terrified to tell you because he thinks you'll feel like he was just using you as a replacement for her. He wasn't. You know, you're nothing like Catherine in the ways that actually matter. She was outgoing and bold and confrontational. You're quiet and thoughtful and gentle. He fell in love with you for who you are, not for who you reminded him of. 6 months later, Julian finally found the courage to tell Sophie the truth. They were walking through the park where Catherine had loved to volunteer at community garden projects, and Julian stopped at a bench with a small plaque bearing Catherine's name. "I want you to meet her," Julian said, officially. "Catherine, this is Sophie. Sophie, this is my late wife, Catherine." Sophie sat down on the bench, touched by the gesture. "Catherine," Julian continued, speaking to the plaque, "Sophie helped me survive our anniversary 2 years ago. She helped me find a therapist who taught me that loving you and learning to live again weren't contradictory. She's become my friend, my confidant. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with her." He turned to Sophie, tears streaming down his face. "I need you to know that I don't love you because you remind me of Catherine. I love you because you're Sophie. Because you're kind and genuine and you believed I deserved support when I was drowning. Because you refused to let me pay for your education outright, insisting on the scholarship so you could feel you earned it. Because you make me laugh and challenge my assumptions and make me want to be better." He took her hands. "But I also need you to know that I will always love Catherine. She was my first love, my wife, and she taught me how to be the man I am today. If you can accept that loving you doesn't mean forgetting her, if you can accept that she'll always be part of my story, then I'm asking if you would consider building a future with me." Sophie was crying now, too. "I don't want you to forget Catherine. She was incredible and she made you who you are. I'm not here to replace her or compete with her memory. I'm here because I fell in love with a man who loved his wife so much that 2 years later he still visits her bench and talks to her. That capacity for deep enduring love is part of why I love you." They were married a year later and Sophie insisted the ceremony include a moment honoring Catherine, a recognition that their love was not built on forgetting but on accepting all the experiences that had shaped them both. Sometimes love comes to us in the midst of grief, not to replace what we lost, but to remind us that our capacity for love survives even the deepest sorrow. And sometimes the greatest love stories are not about forgetting the past, but about honoring it while building something new and beautiful from the pieces of our broken hearts. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more tales of grief and healing, finding love after loss, and discovering that opening our hearts again does not diminish the love we carry for those we have lost. Comment below and share about a time when you found unexpected healing through someone's kindness or when love surprised you in the midst of sorrow. Your story could give someone else permission to hope again.